Anita McBride, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'd love to get your thoughts as we all watched the inauguration yesterday. What moments stood out most to you as you witnessed the ceremony?
Well, a number of things sort of stood out to me. Just the fact that really looking at the west front of the Capitol and so, beautifully prepared for, one of the most important celebrations our country can ever have. And just knowing that 2 weeks ago, it just was, overrun by riots and by, deadly force, really. And just to me, it's just such an example yesterday was of the resilience of the country and things that we can really overcome. And, our stress level or our stress test is at its highest level, let's say that. And I think that the fact that the inauguration could take place and with former presidents there and with the outgoing vice president, I think those things were important. And then the young poet, I think the young poet, really left a great impression on many people in the country with good reason.
Amanda Gorman, wow, that is a name I think many of us will have to follow. She is a remarkable young woman. I have to agree with you there. The overwhelming message during the inauguration was unity. And as you mentioned, we saw presidents from both parties, lawmakers from both parties. What is it going to take to not just accomplish unity, but also civility in our democracy moving forward, given what we have witnessed over the last couple of weeks?
No, it's absolutely right. It's almost like we're needing to retrain ourselves that we can have disagreements without being so disagreeable. And I think there was one, a line in President Biden's inaugural address where he said, disagreement should not lead to disunion. And I thought that was a really profound and important statement for Americans to really reflect on. We are going to have tremendous policy differences and disagreements, and certainly Republicans and Democrats will. And that's the tension, the good tension, that our policymakers should have. But I think that the new president has an opportunity to get Americans thinking along a more civil line again by really reaching out to Republican leadership and bicameral. And then also, I would love to see him hosting them at the White House like really soon to talk about some of these big priorities and proposals that he has. Because it is one thing President Trump really did not do that I think could have helped him a great deal, was really invite members to your house, to not only your place of work, but your house, and really have dialogue with them. And I'm hoping President Biden can do that and do it soon.
And he has said that he wants to be a president for all Americans, even those who didn't vote for him. It will take some time and some convincing for some people to get on board with that. But what challenges lie ahead for him, and how does he make that happen? What specifically does he have to do in terms of optics and policy to bring people on board?
No, you're absolutely right. We have to, we're Americans, we're impatient, and we want quick results. We want to see progress, and we want to see it fast. And I think, the country has been brought to its knees with this pandemic. This last year has been so difficult and, layered over with the rhetoric of our politics that had gotten so uncivil. And I think he has to show progress and real impact on the pandemic. And I think that will help Americans because it filters down to so many things in our lives, not only our health, but our economy and kids getting back to school and so many things. Everything in our lives has been impacted on this. So a real aggressive rollout of the vaccinations is going to be really important. And I think, he has been handed, the vaccines. The vaccine manufacture is happening, and it's happening in more than one country. And Operation Warp Speed was really important. And I hope that the new president could acknowledge that and say, now it's the opportunity to take it the next step. The distribution of these vaccines, which was not well developed, that's his responsibility now. And I think that's what Americans need to see.
Do you think it's realistic, his plan to vaccinate 100 million people in 100 days, given where we are right now?
I know. Well, the numbers, well, that's, it's a great question. What's the capacity of the distribution centers that he wants to work with? I know Dr. Fauci, did a press briefing today after President Biden signed all these executive orders. And they said, working with other organizations and pharmacies and more medical centers and community health centers to do the distribution and the delivery, that's going to be key. And I think there will be willing partners to want to do that. But in terms of the exact numbers, being able to reach that number very quickly, I don't know. I think this is going to go longer than we anticipate.
Do you believe that President Biden and his administration, that it is a priority to take the politics out of the pandemic? Because unfortunately, it has become very political, but it's a pandemic and people just want help, they want assistance, they want relief, they want the fear to go away now and put the politics aside. Do you think that Joe Biden is going to be able to do that?
Well, he has to do it. And I think that, one of the things that has just come up even today, that, one of the major American, companies, Amazon, all of a sudden, now steps up and says that they want to be part of the effort for the distribution, use their enormous facilities. They are masters at logistics and use their facilities for vaccination centers and to be helpful. And the very real question that came up in the press briefing today, too, was, is that something that you, meaning Biden transition, knew about and either asked them to hold or didn't encourage it to go, faster? That would be, if that comes out that was true, that would definitely be one of those examples of politics being played with people's lives and their health. I don't want to believe that it's true. But the outgoing Trump, team said they never heard from Amazon with that offer. And that offer would have been certainly very helpful at the time that Pfizer was unleashing and unrolling those vaccines from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
But isn't the question, did you ask Amazon? Did you ask other big companies? I mean, was the ask made?
That's a very good point. Too. But there was such an effort to work with private sector companies. And so I would hope that they did, but you're right, perhaps that they didn't. Plus also the relationship, of course, between Mr. Bezos and Mr. Trump was not great. So there might have been something that contributed to that.
Anita, I'd love to get your thoughts on the state of the Republican Party right now. What is most critical in addressing some of the division that we're seeing?
Yeah. It's really a worrisome question for many Republicans who accepted Donald Trump as a Republican president, but really were not comfortable with it. And then ultimately were not comfortable with the rhetoric and sort of now how the Republican Party been looked at as obstructionist. And that our leader, our mouthpiece of the Republican Party, was, caused such great division in the country. It's a real challenge, and I think that there are some new young leaders in the Republican Party whose voices are going to need to be heard. I'll give you an example. Two, in fact. One is a group of 17 freshman Republicans wrote to the new president of the United States, Joe Biden, and said, we want to work with you. We want to work with you on pandemic relief, and we want to work with you on infrastructure. And that's a great sign. That's the kind of leadership and voice we want in the Republican Party. The other is, a woman leader, number 3 Republican in the House, Liz Cheney, Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming, who is one of the 10, who voted for impeachment for President Trump. That was a courageous thing to do and tough to do. And now is really facing a backlash in the Republican conference. And also, and what I heard today too, which I find astounding, is potentially a primary opponent in Wyoming. Wyoming only has one, representative and two senators. I mean, she's the representative. And that's the kind of thing we really have to guard against in the Republican Party. Are we going to silence, voices, different voices in our own party? That we'll just have to see where this goes. But I really hope that we're not going to do this, undo ourselves.
And I think it is great to see the new guard coming in, right? But aren't we also called the leaders, the ones with experience, the McConnells and the Pelosis of the world, to also recognize this moment and to be leaders and help to take those new lawmakers under their wings and set an example and be part of the compromise and to change where we've been?
No, absolutely. And you know what? I mean, Speaker Pelosi, she's got a lot of control and she's got a lot of strength. And you have seen over time that young leaders in her party, if they've raised their voices or their head just a little too much, I mean, she's very direct and slapping it down. She's in control. She would never admit that that's the case. She would say it's a big tent and they listen to, to everyone. But she's got a single focus. And she is in control.
Would you not argue that is also the case with Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham?
Well, I think Ted Cruz is a little bit more of an outlier, but Senator McConnell, no doubt about it, he had control of his Senate, of his Republican senators too. That's for sure. And I think in a lot of ways, though, he was effective. But he has a responsibility, though, to bring up a new guard. You're absolutely right about that, because this clearly will be his last time that he's running. I can't see him running for Senate again after this. It was a tough race and a close one this time.
Well, let's get your thoughts on impeachment. Where do you stand on impeachment? Some argue that we should turn the page, move on. President Trump is in Florida now. Others say we've got to hold him accountable for what we witnessed over the last 2 weeks and the fractures that we're seeing.
No, I think what happened at the foot of our Capitol and inside our Capitol on January 6th is amongst one of the most serious things that could have ever happened to our republic. We haven't seen anything like this. And the president bears some responsibility if he encouraged this. And that would come out in an impeachment trial. Let him have witnesses and let him defend himself. I hate to really say this, but I think at the end of the day, this is where we have to remove the person from really and the party from really what is most important to us. And that's always the preservation of the Union and the preservation of the Republic. We're going to have differences, but this is not the way we're going to resolve them. So this is so, it's so hard that we have gotten to this point, but if we don't really take a stand and really get to the bottom of this, I think that it's appropriate that the president is impeached. I do.
Finally, Anita, you have worked for 3 administrations under Republican presidents. If you were advising President Biden right now as to the first steps to really mend the fences, to get some work done on day one, what would your advice be to him?
I think, draw from your own inner reserves of who you are. You have been in this town for decades. You have built relationships on all sides of the aisle. You know people are going to disagree with you, but use your character, use your civility, and give Americans just confidence that you can work with both sides of the aisle. Tell people that one of the first calls you received when you won the election, was from Senator Susan Collins, a Republican in Maine, who the Democrats fought like hell to lose her election, to fight against her. And it was such a tough race. She's one of the most courageous women in the Senate. Republican, that she was one of the first calls you got because you know how to work with her. She knows how to work with you. And that big things can happen in the country because you can work with people who are perceived even by your own party as not being acceptable. So I just think, draw from who you are. You're a good person. Not everyone's going to agree with you. Your instincts are right. Americans are good people. We need to be reminded we are the most generous, compassionate nation on the earth. We don't want to be taken advantage of, but we also want to be seen for the leaders in the world for who we are. So that would be my advice.
Anita McBride, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye.